You are watching or listening to the Shift Training Podcast,
where we talk about personal development. We talk about physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual health, and just overall well-being.
And today we're going to be talking about grace, how to utilize that, what it really is. So let's touch on that. So the first definition, if you look it up, the noun is something like gracious goodwill. Gracious goodwill. And the verb is like do, honor, and
refinement.
No, it's like honor and not respect. Honor and credit. Yeah. Honor and credit to something or someone. To give honor or credit to something or someone. So again, gracious goodwill. Did I say gracious goodwill in the definition of grace?
Yeah, you did.
That's funny. Nonetheless, show goodwill, generous amounts of goodwill, and then also do honor or credit to someone or something. Now, that definition is kind of like, I don't know. And I think that if you're not really spend time hearing the word grace, depending on your spiritual background or religious practice, you may be more or less familiar with the word grace, but we want to give some examples and talk about that. And it's something that I've been working on, been challenged with lately and been working on. So I definitely wanted to talk about this to see who else could benefit from what I've learned recently.
All right.
So one of the most important elements about grace, showing that gracious goodwill and honor, is first place is usually starts with ourselves. So let's say a lack of grace for oneself. What does that look like, Juan?
That looks like beating yourself up, having this self-negative talk, and just not having good talk about yourself.
Yeah, kind of condemning yourself or judging yourself unfavorably in areas or opportunities where you could potentially not. The way that I view grace, my own kind of definition for myself, is prolonging or postponing or delaying unfavorable judgment in a particular situation or circumstance and choosing to extend goodwill or honor instead. So even if there might be reasons that I might want to condemn or judge unfavorably or whatever it may be, to prolong that or set that aside and be like, well, I'll choose goodwill. And goodwill again, and some more goodwill again, and some honor and credit instead. That is an extension of grace, which is something that we should all practice, not just for ourselves, but especially in regards to others. And Christianity is something along the lines of, we're giving fresh grace and mercy every day, meaning that, we should take that and absorb that and realize what that really means is that mistakes happen. We're going to make mistakes. There's no reason to lean into beating ourselves up. Give ourselves grace for what we have done. Give ourselves grace for the fact that we continue to show up to learn this lesson, even though we might not have learned it yet.
100%. I think that's an important key point, what you mentioned, that grace is not only for others. It's because it all start from yourself first. You're not judging yourself, you're not condemning yourself. And if you start anything that's new, a new activity, then there's this plethora of fear that you're gonna feel. You're gonna feel overwhelmed. You're gonna feel scared. But as long as you put that action, you show up. You have to give yourself some grace. You can't judge yourself. Everyone has to go through something. If it's new, no, that's gonna be hard. But beating yourself up will not serve you.
1000%. Nor will beating others up.
Yeah.
It's very easy to play the blame game, but that usually doesn't serve or help situations. I'm going to say like 90% of the time, which is different from acknowledging responsibility or things like that. Still, the focus should be solution oriented.
Yeah, absolutely.
More often than not, and that generally requires the distribution of grace.
Yes, absolutely.
So one of the issues that I ran into recently for myself is feeling like I'm tapped out of grace. Like I don't got no more grace. I don't want to give out no more. No more grace. None. So the question that was presented to me when I was seeking guidance was, well, how do you refill that? How do you refill grace? How do you get your grace meter back up? How do you refill that tank? And for myself, there's a process that I went through that I think is, you know, I'll break down what I think are the basic elements of it, but how you explore those elements, I think, is up to you. So I think the first thing is going to be like a forgiveness. So, for example, if you're upset about something, either with yourself or someone else, and your tank is empty, I think you need to reach a state of kind of like forgiveness. You need to be ready to forgive, and maybe that starts with acceptance. Some people we go acceptance,
I think it
forgiveness.
starts with understanding first.
I think that not required. I think that understanding sometimes may keep you in a loop of trying to figure stuff out. And sometimes when we're trying to understand something and we can't understand outside our own perspective, we go deeper into our own perspective. So it gives us more reason to not want to extend grace. So it would require us to really be able to interact with another person, or if it's with ourselves, yes, take the time to really understand where things come from yourself. But if it's another person, it kind of requires you to get some input from the other person or someone else to really understand what's going on beyond your own perspective.
Right. I think that's important, to not judge them to the way they act towards you, the attitudes, the behaviors. You just never know. And if you let yourself get sucked into those field, those area of negativity, then it's going to just harm you, mentally. And I think, the appreciation and understanding, or not understand, acceptance is important. Forgiveness is one of those things that we all need to learn in ourselves, that's an important factor of healing.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that cycle is like acceptance. Let me see the process I went through. Acceptance, forgiveness, and then gratitude. So kind of in that loop. Yeah, because you need to accept what's going on. Even if you agree or disagree or don't like it, then you need to forgive yourself or whatever for whatever's going on. It doesn't mean you have to. This, because we're talking about grace, we're talking about the prolonging of negative judgment, right? Gracious goodwill, giving out, or generous goodwill, giving it out. So in that case, that's where forgiveness. That's that element there, and then we move on to the part where it's like, okay, what am I grateful for? And that helps to refill the cup. There's so many reasons to be grateful. So many times where grace is extended to myself. So many times where there's plenty of good things that have come from the situation or circumstance. So it's kind of like being mindful of that brings us back to the full picture and helps us refill our cup. Now, how we do that, that might be different for
everyone.
Everyone might have their own ways of reaching a point of acceptance, different process for forgiveness, and different process for experiencing or soaking up gratitude.
Yeah, absolutely. I think, it depends on the person. We all have our unique way to appreciate those grace,
Right. So, so for grace, I would say again, you can look up the definition. Definition that I use again is delaying unfavorable judgment and extending that generous goodwill, honor and credit as much as possible. Vaughn, any other thoughts on grace? Oh, and we didn't talk about the utility of it. So we talked a little bit about what grace is and what that looks like in an example. Basically, being upset with yourself about something and beating yourself up, or being upset with somebody else and wanting to blame them or point the finger at them for something. Both of those are definitely a lack of grace. But the utility of extending grace is it creates space for healing. It creates space for understanding. I think those are two of the biggest elements of that. And in terms of grace, giving yourself grace is going to help improve your relationship with yourself. and your self-talk, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is also going to improve the way you have conversations or interact with other people. Now, we're not saying grace to the point of like not honoring your boundaries or people pleasing, because that's a negative side effect. So there's no utility at that point. Just like with too much water at some point, it's just going to drown you. It's not going to have any utility at that point.
That's right.
So, you want to be
Mindful.
Abundance of grace, but also don't drown yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely, there's a balance in there.
Right. So, anything else?
I think that's it for us.
All right, cool. Where can they find us?
Don't forget to follow us on our social media, Shift on Your Life, and don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel and podcast, Shift Training.
All right, guys, thank you. We appreciate you taking time to listen, and we hope that this serves you. Have a great day.